I think that the Czech Republic is kind of in an interesting place because if we look geographically, obviously, it's right next to Hungary and Slovakia, who have got now what would be considered populist far-right leaders. And then Czech has also taken in a humongous amount of refugees from Ukraine following this beginning of the war. However, if we go back to, say, the origin of the migration crisis into Europe in 2016, Czech took in a very low amount of immigrants, which were predominantly from the Middle East or from North Africa, compared to the other countries surrounding it. So we don't see as much of this far-right sentiment here as we do in some of the other regions around it. If you look, for instance, we had the presidential elections in Czech Republic in January, and the ex-NATO general Peter Pavel was elected president, who's quite a centrist figure, very strong on support of Ukraine, etc. And the sentiment within the society has remained quite supportive of support for Ukraine, and then additionally supporting the Ukrainian migrants here, even as inflationary pressures have come to bear because of the increased costs and everything, and the decrease in housing supply that naturally follows this mass immigration event. I think part of that, if we look at Czech society, is because there's this historical closeness to the Ukrainian people compared to when other countries in Europe have taken in immigrants from different cultural backgrounds, whether that's Middle Eastern or North African or West African. So right now, I would not say that within Czech society there is like a lot of pressure from the far right, even though if you look around it, there is definitely a lot of instances where there is this far right, I guess, surge, or populist, I think is more appropriate to say in Slovakia and Hungary's case, and even in Poland prior to the recent elections, there was quite the populist leader Duda in charge there. So I think Czech is kind of an interesting place, even after the floods here. As you said, it has been quite severely affected, but I don't know yet what the long-term effects of that will be. They're saying it's the largest the second largest insurance bill ever footed by companies for a natural event in the Czech Republic. So these things can often take time to come into effect, and then when people long-term start to see their living situation deteriorate, then that can be something that potentially gets used by the far right, but I don't see that in the short to medium term here at the moment.
And then, Ronan, while we've got you as well, of course, you are Geopolitical Futures Africa expert. A huge amount of what's been going on in the Eurozone and in Europe and the UK in the last kind of decade plus, and it's inspiring in some ways the rise of more extreme ends of the spectrum is migration crises. Just talk us through where that is at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first major migration crisis, as you said, was about a decade ago, and that's where we saw the mass migration, which did spawn a lot of the impetus for these parties with migrants, especially coming from Syria, from war-torn parts of Middle East, but then also from North Africa. And there was the big migration, obviously, into Germany, into Sweden, and then into Hungary and other parts across Europe. However, a lot of that slowed down when the EU basically stemmed that migration flow. And then this is just over the last year or two started to pick up again, except this time it's a bit different. It's nowhere near the same volumes as before. However, the channels that they're coming are a little bit different. We see instead of the Balkan route, the so-called Balkan route through the Eastern Mediterranean and around through Turkey, and then up through the Balkans into Europe that way, the main focus now for migration is from North Africa. And if we look, that's from Morocco and Algeria into Spain, from Tunisia predominantly, which is the highest rate at the moment, into Italy, and then from Senegal, from off the coast of West Africa, in Senegal, in Mauritania, and in Gambia, into the Spanish Canary Islands, where people are seeking asylum there. So this is like the new major migration routes. And the EU has now looked to stem this with using significant amounts of money. Obviously, in Italy, we see the populist leader, Giorgia Meloni, as the prime minister. And this has been kind of a cornerstone of her politics, I guess, even part of her election campaign before she was elected. And as a result, she was able to strike a deal with the EU Commission, where you saw von der Leyen and Meloni head to Tunisia in July last year and basically offer significant money to the government there to have their assistance in stemming migration. And if we look at the numbers, it has been somewhat effective. I don't think it's been particularly effective bang for your buck wise because of the amount that's been spent. But if we look last year, for instance, there was over 120,000 migrant crossings from Tunisia into Italy specifically. And this year they're saying it's down to September this year, it's down to around 40,000. So still quite high, but significantly lower. But obviously this has become a major part where you have to partner with these North African countries to try and stop the migration there. And it does run into some problems when we look at the human rights records, say, of Algeria and Tunisia, where they're very much accused of mistreating these migrants, basically putting them in camps, and they're basically in a terrible situation there. But it has been somewhat effective. And then if we look again at Spain, also, as I said, a key channel. The Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez just last month was visiting Senegal, Mauritania, and Gambia specifically to try and address this irregular migration issue to the Canary Islands. And the solution that they offered there was to basically offer both investment within those countries and give opportunities for citizens of, say, Senegal or Mauritania to come into Spain and work in a legal, orderly process. So there's different ways it's been tackled. I think that the one country where it's been quite successful, and I think it also stems back to a piece I wrote quite recently, is Morocco, because Morocco has kind of become a very good partner for the European Union. We see even there's two tiny Spanish outposts within Morocco, basically enclaves just on the coast there, and the Moroccan security have been very much in step with the EU at trying to not allow these irregular crossings, especially over the past 12 months when that was kind of becoming another issue for the EU. So I think there's like all these different routes coming into Europe from North Africa. Each has their own challenges. Each has their own kind of approach to address it. As I said, it's nowhere near the volume of 2016 or 2015. However, it is still quite concerning, I think, for some of the governments here. And not only because of the numbers of immigrants coming on, but also because then of the impetus that can give to the far right as a direct result.